In the gleaming corporate towers of downtown Manhattan, where success was measured in quarterly reports and stock prices, Richard Chen had built an empire that commanded respect from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, but nothing could have prepared him for the life-changing discovery he would make on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon that would forever alter his understanding of true worth and human dignity. As the CEO of Chen Technologies, a multinational software company that had revolutionized cloud computing solutions for Fortune 500 companies, Richard lived a carefully structured life of board meetings, international conferences, and strategic decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of dollars in revenue. Yet despite all his professional accomplishments, his greatest concern remained his 12-year-old daughter Sophie, who had been struggling academically since her mother's death 3 years earlier. Sophie had always been a bright child, but the loss of her mother had left her withdrawn and disinterested in schoolwork, despite Richard's efforts to provide the best tutors, private schools, and educational resources that money could buy. Her grades had steadily declined, and her teachers expressed concern about her lack of engagement and motivation, leaving Richard feeling helpless despite his ability to solve complex business problems with ease. He had tried everything from hiring expensive educational consultants to enrolling her in exclusive after-school programs. But nothing seemed to reach Sophie or reignite her passion for learning, and Richard found himself working longer hours, partly as a way to avoid confronting his failure as a father to help his daughter through her grief and academic struggles. On that fateful Tuesday, Richard had decided to leave the office early for once, hoping to surprise Sophie by picking her up from school personally instead of sending his usual driver. A gesture he hoped might show her that she was more important to him than any business meeting or corporate obligation. As he approached the prestigious private academy where Sophie attended classes, he noticed her sitting on a bench in the small park adjacent to the school grounds, but she wasn't alone. Sitting beside her was a girl who appeared to be roughly the same age, though her appearance told a starkly different story from Sophie's designer uniform and polished shoes. This other girl wore clothes that were clean but clearly worn, with patches carefully sewn onto her jeans and shoes that had seen far better days. Yet despite her modest appearance, she was animatedly explaining something from a textbook while Sophie listened with rapt attention, displaying more engagement than Richard had seen from his daughter in months. Curious and somewhat concerned about who this mysterious girl might be and why his daughter seemed so captivated by her company, Richard decided to observe from a distance, rather than immediately intervening, positioning himself behind a large oak tree where he could watch their interaction without being noticed. What he witnessed over the next 30 minutes completely transformed his understanding of his daughter and challenged every assumption he had made about education, privilege, and the true meaning of teaching. The girl, who couldn't have been older than 13, was patiently helping Sophie work through complex algebra problems, explaining mathematical concepts with a clarity and enthusiasm that made even Richard, with his engineering background, appreciate the elegance of her teaching methods. As Richard continued to watch, he realized that this wasn't a casual encounter between classmates, but rather what appeared to be a regular tutoring session, with the mysterious girl pulling out carefully organized notes, written on scraps of paper, and using creative analogies to help Sophie understand difficult concepts. What struck him most profoundly was the genuine joy on Sophie's face as she began to grasp problems that had previously frustrated her to tears, and the patience and kindness with which this young girl guided her through each step, never showing frustration or condescension despite Sophie's occasional struggles to keep up. The girl's teaching style was completely different from the formal, expensive tutors Richard had hired. Instead of rigid adherence to textbook methods, she used storytelling, real-world examples, and gentle encouragement to make learning feel like an adventure rather than a chore. After watching this remarkable display of natural teaching ability and genuine compassion, Richard decided to approach the girls, though he was careful to do so in a way that wouldn't embarrass either of them or disrupt what was clearly a special friendship that had developed between them. As he walked toward the bench, both girls looked up with surprise, and Sophie immediately began introducing her father to her tutor and friend, Maya, whose humble appearance became even more striking when contrasted with the confidence and intelligence she displayed in her interactions with both Sophie and Richard. When Richard asked Maya about her background and how she had come to know Sophie, the story that emerged was both heartbreaking and inspiring in ways that challenged everything Richard thought he knew about success, education, and human resilience. Maya, as it turned out, was indeed homeless, living with her younger brother in a series of temporary shelters after their parents had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, leaving them in the care of an overwhelmed foster care system that had struggled to find them permanent placement. Despite her circumstances, Maya had maintained perfect grades at her public school and had been helping other students with their studies for months, not for money, which she desperately needed, but simply because she loved learning and wanted to share that passion with others who were struggling academically. She had met Sophie by chance several weeks earlier when Sophie was crying in the park after a particularly difficult day at school, and Maya had spontaneously offered to help her with the homework that was causing such distress. What began as a single afternoon of impromptu tutoring had evolved into a regular arrangement where Maya would meet Sophie after school 3 days a week, patiently working through math problems, helping with essay writing, and providing the kind of educational support that had transformed Sophie's academic performance and, more importantly, her attitude toward learning. Maya never asked for payment, despite her obvious need, and when Sophie had tried to offer her money from her allowance, Maya had gently declined, explaining that helping others learn was its own reward and that she was grateful to have a friend who appreciated her help. As Richard listened to this extraordinary story, he found himself deeply moved by Maya's resilience, intelligence, and selfless generosity, qualities that seemed even more remarkable given the challenges she faced daily just to survive. Here was a child who had every reason to be bitter, angry, or focused solely on her own struggles. Yet she had chosen to spend her limited free time helping another child succeed academically, asking for nothing in return except the satisfaction of seeing Sophie improve and gain confidence. The contrast between Maya's situation and his own daughter's privileged circumstances was stark. Yet Maya had accomplished what teams of expensive professionals had failed to achieve. She had rekindled Sophie's love of learning and helped her believe in her own capabilities. Richard's initial reaction was to immediately offer Maya money, a place to stay, or any other material assistance she might need, but as he began to express these thoughts, he realized that such gestures, while well-intentioned, might not address the deeper issues at play or honor the dignity and independence that Maya had maintained despite her circumstances. Instead, he found himself asking Maya about her own dreams and aspirations, learning that she hoped to become a teacher someday, despite the obvious obstacles that her current situation presented to achieving that goal. Her eyes lit up as she talked about her love of mathematics and her belief that every child could succeed academically if given the right support and encouragement. And Richard recognized in her the kind of natural educator that couldn't be trained or manufactured. It was simply an intrinsic part of who she was. Over the following days, Richard found himself thinking constantly about Maya and the profound impact she had made on his daughter's life through nothing more than kindness, patience, and genuine care for Sophie's success. He began to realize that all of his wealth and corporate achievements meant nothing compared to the simple but powerful gift that this homeless girl had given his daughter, the restoration of her confidence and joy in learning. Richard also began to understand that Maya represented something he had lost sight of in his focus on material success. The idea that true value came not from what someone possessed, but from what they contributed to the lives of others. The solution that Richard eventually proposed to Maya and her brother was not charity, but rather a partnership that recognized Maya's extraordinary abilities while providing her with the stability and resources she needed to pursue her dreams. He offered to become their legal guardian, providing them with a loving home environment while ensuring that Maya could continue her education at the finest schools available, with the understanding that her unique talents as a natural teacher were gifts that deserved to be cultivated and shared with the world. Richard also established a scholarship program in Maya's honor, designed to identify and support other young people who, despite facing significant challenges, demonstrated exceptional academic ability and a